The Chiropractic Philanthropist, episode 256.
The outcome we want is, wait a minute, when can I get into your office for that? Okay, and that's a different conversation.
Starting your own practice is hard for many chiropractors. It's riddled with both struggles and successes. But here at the Chiropractic Philanthropist, we make it easy by having chiropreneurs and entrepreneurs share their struggles and lessons learned in life and business so that you don't have to make the same mistakes. And now here's your host, Dr. Ed Osborne.
My guest today on the Chiropractic Philanthropist is Dr. Jason Deitch. Dr. Deitch is the founder of the world's largest social media content library and network amplifier for natural healthcare professionals. This resource can be found at joinamplified.com. In this episode, we discuss a new and valuable resource that Dr. Deitch is putting together to help doctors be more successful than ever. Now, before we get to Dr. Deitch, let's go ahead and actually thank today's sponsor, and that is ChiroClicker, the world's first chiropractic adjusting tool for kids. It allows children to play chiropractors at home, pretending to adjust their family and all their teddies and dolls. Chiropractors can buy ChiroClicker in bulk and sell them in their office or give them away to their patients. TCP listeners get a 10% discount by using the code TCP10. That's at chiroclicker.com. ChiroClicker, nurturing the next generation of chiropractors. Jason, how you doing?
Doing fantastic, Ed. Thanks for having me, my friend.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, I mean, we in our pre-chat, boy, you and I, we can just go off. So I want to get right to it because this is probably the third, if not going to maybe be the fourth installment that we've had in TCP. Done a couple of webinars, things like that too. I'm going to put your introduction. You probably, everyone who's listening right now, they've already heard your introduction. They know who you are. Let's get right to the good stuff. I want to talk about this project, Talk the Tick, because I saw what was going on there. I was so inspired because, when I was a chiropractic student, I didn't know how to voice my message, and I really, really struggled the first couple of years. And I see that you've taken this by the reins, and you really have a solve here. Can you tell us a little bit about the story of where this originated, and then what happened last week?
So absolutely, and again, thanks for having me, and hello everyone again. So about a year ago, a little over a year ago now, actually, a doctor by the name of Eric Van Slooten, Dr. Eric Van Slooten, approached me. He had been watching what we were doing on AmpLIFEied and so on, been seeing through social media, what I've been trying to do, which is really inspire our profession to get with the times, to understand these technologies and how powerful they really are to get the chiropractic story, your chiropractic story, to as many people as possible. So that's my driving force. He had started this student public speaking competition, sort of a lay lecture competition, when he was in school as part of his fraternity and so on. He built this Talk the Tick brand, and I believe it was 12 years ago he started it, and he was running it every year through campuses around the world. There's actually an English edition and a Spanish edition. And he'd been running it each and every year as a hobby, basically. He did a phenomenal job. But he had some family concerns. He's running his practice, second-generation chiropractor. And his heart was saying, this has got to get to as many people as possible. His reality was saying, I don't have the capacity to build it any higher than I have. So he actually just personally reached out to me and he said, I see what you're doing. This needs to be amplified. Would you, please take it over and run with it, get it where it needs to be, and I know it needs to be. And so we worked out some arrangements, and I did. I said, not that I needed another project, but I knew that teaching students, in fact, inspiring students to in fact compete on how well you can, share the chiropractic story, I think is probably one of the most important things our profession really needs to start training. I know people, how good of an adjuster you are is an important component. Your ability to, open up a business and, not lose money. That's an important component. But I think we have really drastically undervalued the importance of being great communicators. Yeah. And even those of us that have been great communicators, I think we've sort of lived through a culture that I'm going to say no longer serves us in today's world and the future. In the days when, the biggest practices in the world were built because it was a requirement to come to a health talk or doctor's presentation before they even started care. People would show up in your office, you'd do, whatever your hour presentation was, and people could decide, yes, I'm interested, no, I'm not, before they even started care. And that is how, the Reggie Golds of the world and so on built the largest practices in history. Well, today those conversations go on, here.
Yeah.
You know it and I know it. And it's a slightly different conversation. It's not necessarily an hour-lay lecture in your office to start. This is what gets them to that. Anyway, long story short, Eric approached me. I said, this is a project that has to grow. It has to go on. And I want to make sure that it gets into the right hands and grows. So I took it over and immediately reached out to a few very good friends of mine who are, mentors and also great at this. Dr. Gilles Lamarche, hopefully everybody knows. Mm-hmm. And also my good buddy, Dr. Brad Glowacki, teaches Art of the Close, teaches the 10-minute talk. Two great friends, passionate chiropractors who are in it for all the right reasons, really trying to inspire our profession to level up our communication. Yeah. So that was the spirit of taking it on. And last week was our really first year that we were doing our international competition. Gilles Lamarche basically, was our operations guy. He, to a T, just as he does everything, as perfectly as he does. He managed it. He got, everybody in the right seats at the right time. What Brad Glowacki did was he actually took some of his top communicators in his program that he's been doing, asked them basically as favors to mentor and become judges at chiropractic campuses across the country. Wow. So some of his, expert communicators now were going to Logan, to New York Chiropractic College, to Sherman. On their own time, on their own dime, they started volunteering at the campuses across the country to hold contests at the local campus. And then the winner of the local campus competition all flies to our international competition, which is what we held last week. So for those that aren't familiar with how the competition works, each campus is invited to hold their campus competition. And they send their top number one winner to the international finals. And I just have to give kudos to the judges because some of these campuses don't necessarily embrace the idea. I don't know how there are chiropractic colleges that aren't into teaching chiropractic, but we'll save that for another podcast, maybe another time. But what I loved about the passion was in some of those cases, these doctors actually came up with and funded holding these competitions off campus.
Wow.
So the students could still compete. And in some cases, the judges paid for the student to, in fact, get to Atlanta, paid for their lodging and the whole thing. So, speaking of chiropractic philanthropists, this was just a generous group of, chiropractors who are super passionate. The upside for them, I'll dare say, is that they now have an inside scoop on their campus to the best communicators, who they may use for screenings, for lectures, for future associate positions. So they got something good out of the deal. But I do believe that they were doing it out of the passion of their heart. Anyway, that's the project. What I loved so much, and I think you saw this, we broadcast, Facebook Live.
Yeah.
The room, people told us it was their favorite part about the entire weekend. I think it might have been my favorite part too, because here you saw students, not even graduating, on stage. And I mean students from all different kinds of chiropractic college, Northwestern, New York, Logan, Parker, Palmer. And these students who hadn't yet graduated, I'm telling you, did a better job than probably a lot of the doctors in the audience could have done or were doing. And all for the rest of the weekend, the energy and the vibration was, thank you for showing us what needs to be done. we've got to take this more seriously and get much better at doing it. So it was one of those grand slams. The irony, Ed, between you and I as friends, this was one of, I think, my greatest successes, and it was one of those things that I truly, literally put the least amount of effort in personally, because I had such a great team, on board with Gilles and Brad and the judges and so on. It was awesome.
Yeah.
It was really.
Well, I got to tell you, I mean, like Jason, I saw it when I saw, and because I was unaware, and the reason I say this is because I'm sure that there's lots of listeners right now that were unaware. But when I saw it, I'm like, oh my God! I reached out to you right away. I'm like, how can I help? How can I support this? Because it was it resonated with me, and I think it'll resonate with a lot of the listeners today, whether they're a student, right, and they want to take part in this next year, or whether it's someone who is a doctor out there that needs to level up their game in terms of communication. I was telling you is that I had this experience, and I still clearly remember going to one of these seminars, and it was as simple as a chiropractor who was very successful. He was in the upper echelon of the group, got up and he just presented his lay lecture. And it was gold. It was so good. And I learned so much. I couldn't stop taking notes. I wanted to record it. And I think I still have that recording, and I still listen to it sometimes. It's that good. And it did make me want to improve I improved what I was doing, but I love that this is actually the students who are, having the doctors really level up their game. So, I mean, is that what a lot of what you would say is that communication factor? Is really what we're missing in our profession today?
I think it is. And to be more specific, I think that we've sort of lived through a phase, and built a culture around this concept of educating the public about chiropractic. Yeah. I hear that all the time. And I believe we are in a shift. We're in a different time period. I don't think that works. I don't think it's as effective. I'm not saying that people don't need to understand what chiropractic is. That's not what I'm saying. I am saying, however, that if our focus is on teaching them what we do, then I don't think we're going to be nearly as effective as perhaps teaching them how to be more curious about taking better care of themselves, mm-hmm. right? About perhaps teaching them our philosophy, what we refer to as vitalism, the fact that we're all connected, that we have an inner power to self-heal and so on. Until people really connect their philosophical premise with our philosophical premise, then many people still continue to use chiropractic in their old paradigm, which is they think, sure, chiropractic is great. Every time I get a headache, I go in, you crack my neck, I feel better, and it's terrific. And I say to myself, we haven't done our job. That's great that you like it, but as far as, again, my opinion, my belief, my vision, my passion, what I do, my all day and all night, literally, is really try to connect the public with our philosophical premise. Because if they really understood why we do what we do, not just what we do, but why we do it, I think every chiropractor who subscribes to these types of philosophy, their practices would have waiting lists. They'd be as busy as can be. The schools would be full. People would be demanding that their insurance covers it. They'd be willing to pay out of their pocket. We'd be living in a much different paradigm. And until people truly get the essence of really how important staying well connected, being well adjusted, however you want to refer to it, having a clear nervous system, until they really understand the outcome and how valuable it is to them, all it really sounds like is we're just a professional trade organization trying to sell more people our agenda, the things we do. And I just think that has limited value and limited effectiveness in today's world. So, there are people like Brad Glowacki teaching, how do you go into a company and in 10 minutes or less have a line of people that can't wait to get into your office, and in fact are signing up to bring family members and coworkers and friends and so on and so forth. That's what I think needs to happen. And I think we go to these seminars and we spend a lot of time talking to each other, chiropractor to chiropractor. And I think it's time for us to really, start shifting into focusing, how do we learn from each other about how we speak to the public in ways that gets them to want to come into our offices. So that's what I think is the skill set that our profession could probably use some improvement on.
And I imagine Dr. Glowacki, he's not for 10 minutes reciting research. He's not, he's not giving the stats. And that never worked for me in communication in my practice. Because what happens now too, because it's everything has changed, is you can actually quote a stat or research or whatever, and someone can literally be sitting in your open room, Google and go, Doc, but it says here on Google that that's not actually true. So, you can always find the challenges, but when you come from that common sense perspective and the why of what we do as chiropractors, it just makes sense. It's logic, right? And I'm sure that that's part of the communication that Dr. Glow is actually teaching. And I want to give a call. I imagine he's part of the Conversations with Masters. Is he?
Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, I'm going to give the call out because I want everyone to hear this. So if you actually head over to talkthetick.com, you'll actually be able to opt in for Conversations with Masters. And now maybe you can fill the listeners in a little bit more about, what are they going to get when they actually opt in?
We Jill LaMarche actually took this on. I started with it and then just got so busy. Jill's like, I love doing this. Let me take this on. And what he did was many of the popular communication coaches, most of them you'll see, you're very familiar with who they are. Jill, in some cases Jill and I, in some cases just Jill, he would interview them about their communication strategies. And we all resonate with different people, men or women, younger or older. We all have an energy and a vibration. So we wanted to interview a whole bunch of people so that you can get a variety of different perspectives and really create your own. And so it's just, it's a free resource. Everything we're really doing is for the most part free. We try to, be as generous as we possibly can. And you can go and listen to these great interviews of what other successful chiropractors are doing to grow their practice. And we're just getting this started. We want to build this library out. So even though you may sign up today, we're going to have more people that we'll be interviewing and so on. But it's really the premise is it's time for our profession, starting with students and then even getting out into practice, to just make this transition. Again, as Brad says it, you don't want people at the end of your talk to go, that was very interesting. Wow, I did not know that. Thank you for teaching me that. We may think that's the outcome that we want. It's not, in my opinion. The outcome we want is, wait a minute, when can I get into your office for that? Okay, and that's a different conversation. So we interviewed in Conversations with Masters, a variety of some of our favorites. We've got a list of more people we want to interview, but get involved, get started, and start listening to what's up.
And getting people to come into your office I call it as a lighthouse, like being an illuminator. They want to come in, you're attracting them in, you're guiding them versus pulling them in, right? Like, the tugboat, like going out and grabbing someone and pulling them back to shore, which is what a lot of chiropractors do these days. Yeah. And, I don't want to call it scare tactics or scarcity mindset in terms of doing that. But yeah, really just having people really just get what we do. And you and I had this really interesting conversation about this, and I want to touch on this too. This isn't just in terms of because not every doc does a lay lecture, right? Not every doc goes out and speaks. But a lot of docs are very curious. Like I did a webinar with another doctor just a week and a half ago, I think, a week ago, and we had 400 chiropractors that were registered. More than 25% of them actually showed up live for that training. It was all about Facebook video and Facebook Live. It's all about communicating your message. And one of the biggest questions, Jason, was, what do I talk about? How do I communicate? So this is clearly a pain point for chiropractors right now, but it's relevant in the digital age, right? So this is an incredible conversation. I'm going to give that call, that shout out one more time. So if you actually head over to thechiropracticphilanthropist.com, we're going to have a webpage dedicated to our discussion with Dr. Jason Deitch today. We're also going to have clickable links to all the resources that we've provided. So you can head over, you can actually get the Conversations with Masters right now and start downloading that information and upping your communication, Doc. If you're on your mobile, go ahead, open those show notes. There'll be clickable links. You can actually do that right now. So go ahead, open your show notes and click through and opt in. But yeah, other than that, Jason, this is just really such an incredible conversation. And I want to actually revisit that. We're going to revisit some of this information, I think probably in another couple of weeks, maybe even a month from now, about this communication factor, and keep hoping to level up the communication of chiropractic in general. So I want to thank you so much for being on the Chiropractic Philanthropist today.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. If I can just leave a couple calls to action,
Yes.
hopefully, like how do we grow this thing? One of them is please approach your alma mater, the school you went to, whatever school you went to, and just make sure that they are participating, that they're holding a contest, that they're familiar with Talk the Tick. If you are local, maybe become a mentor for one of their groups. The students need the help. They appreciate doctors coming in and helping them. So we had eight schools in the country, 9 including New Zealand. The winner was from New Zealand. But we've got schools from around the world participating in this, so please make sure your school's participating. And our dream is to now bring this actually to the profession and start creating competition amongst chiropractors. So I'll just say for those people that haven't joined your program yet, they should, because the next level for us with this whole Talk the Tick thing is really to bring it to the profession. We've talked about this, and I think we'll probably work in parallel with each other, but there should be hundreds, if not thousands, of options for chiropractors to look at other chiropractors' videos and go, that's a great one today, I'm going to share that. And so I just want to thank you for all you're doing, because I know we have the same vision. We know we've got to keep teaching doctors how to use these technologies, what to say when they learn how to basically click the live button on Facebook. It's not that much more difficult than that. But it's time to, you said it beautifully, and I've heard it said, nobody likes to be sold, but everybody loves to buy. So it's time for us to stop pushing our message and really start inviting people to be curious and want our message. And, again, I give you kudos for all your work and all you're doing. And besides, thanks for having me. Thanks for doing what you're doing.
Yeah, and let's wrap it up with just really asking, 2 questions to the listeners today, which is, how do you show up when you do a lay lecture? How do you show up when you're trying to communicate your message of chiropractic? How does it feel? I even get this all the time. Like people will the chiropractors will ask me, what do you do? Personally. So, knowing and being able to define exactly what you do in a sentence or two to communicate it in your lay lecture is so vital. Is just as vital as the care, as the adjustment. So thank you so much for giving back today, Jason.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Thanks for listening, everyone.
So you've heard the struggles, you've heard the successes, and this episode is done. But there's still so much more to come and so much more to learn. Head on over to the chiropracticphilanthropist.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive free practice building tips and strategies, including how to market your practice with your very own podcast and so much more. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Chiropractic Philanthropist.